You know, back in early 2024, the internet as we know it came just weeks away from a complete catastrophe. A single hacker, or maybe a whole team, had quietly built a secret key, a key that could unlock millions of servers all over the world, and almost nobody had a clue it was even happening. This is the incredible story of the XZ Backdoor.
I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. One single key to get past the security on government servers, on banks, hospitals, the entire maintenance backbone of our digital lives. It sounds like something straight out of a spy movie, right?
Well, it wasn't fiction. This key was very real, and it was hiding inside a tiny, totally ordinary piece of software that's used almost everywhere. And if it wasn't for one single developer noticing a half-second lag, just a tiny delay, our world would probably look very, very different today.
So just how big was this threat really? Let's try to put this into perspective. The goal here wasn't just to steal data from one company, oh no. The goal was to have a key to, well, everything.
That's right, millions upon millions of servers. With a backdoor like this, an attacker could spy on anyone, hold entire countries for ransom, or just shut things down. The potential for absolute chaos was basically unlimited. And to understand how we got so vulnerable, we first need to talk about the unsung heroes of the internet. See, so much of the modern world runs on this thing called open source software. It's a whole philosophy built on collaboration and, most importantly, trust. But, as we're about to see, that trust can be twisted and used as a weapon.
It all really got started back in the 80s. Companies began locking down their software code. So imagine you're a developer who just wants to fix a jamming printer, but you're legally blocked from even looking at the code that runs it. This kind of frustration sparked the whole free software movement, which eventually led to the creation of Linux in 1991. An operating system built entirely on the idea that code should be open for absolutely everyone to see, to change, and to share.
And so the software world kind of split in two. On one side, you've got proprietary software like Windows or Mac OS, where the code is a secret, and on the other, you have open source, where the code is totally public. And this is not some niche little hobby. Today, the open source Linux ecosystem powers almost everything, from the Android phone in your pocket to the world's most powerful supercomputers.
Now, the whole security promise of open source is built on this simple but really powerful idea called Linus's Law. Basically, it says that if enough people are looking at the code, someone is bound to spot any problems. But what happens if the problem isn't a bug in the code? What if the problem is the people?
And this quote from an old XKCD comic just hits the nail on the head. The internet is like a giant Jenga tower, and some of the most critical, load-bearing blocks at the very bottom aren't maintained by massive corporations. No, they're looked after by unpaid volunteers, people working on passion projects in their spare time.
And this is exactly where our attacker comes in. They didn't try to hack the code with some brute force attack. No, they were much smarter. They executed a patient, methodical, 2-year-long social engineering campaign, and they aimed it at just one of those volunteer maintainers. Meet Lassie Collin. For nearly 20 years, he had been the unpaid, volunteer maintainer of XZ, a vital data compression tool that's used by almost every single major Linux system. But by 2022, he was completely burned out, dealing with mental health issues and just getting buried under a mountain of criticism for being too slow. And then, right on cue, a savior appeared. An account with the name Jia Tan started submitting really helpful code. At the exact same time, other mysterious accounts started amplifying the pressure on Lasse, complaining constantly. Finally, completely exhausted, Lasse handed over control of the project to Jia Tan. The trap was sprung.
So, now Jia Tan has control of the XZ project. They have their Trojan horse inside the city gates of millions of computer systems. The question is, how in the world do you build a backdoor that's so sophisticated it can hide right there in plain sight?
The ultimate target was a program called OpenSSH. You can think of it as the universal key that administrators used to securely log into servers and manage them. Getting a backdoor in here is like having a master key that opens every single room in a hotel.
Jia Tan's plan was a work of art. Really, a 3-step masterpiece. First, you hide the malicious code, not out in the open, but inside binary test files. These are files that just look like random data, and developers almost never check them. Second, you use a super obscure system feature to trigger that code at the perfect Goldilocks moment when the system is starting up. And third, you hijack the login process itself, letting you take total control.
So, the backdoor was in place. It was already spreading through pre-release versions of major Linux operating systems. It was just weeks away from being deployed globally. And then, the entire multi-year, multi-million-dollar operation was unraveled by a tiny, tiny glitch.
And the hero of our story? He's not a cybersecurity agent from some three-letter agency. He's Andres Frund, a developer at Microsoft who just happened to be running some routine performance tests on his database software. He wasn't even looking for a backdoor. Freund noticed something tiny. His system logins were taking just half a second longer than they should. A tiny, almost imperceptible delay. But for a performance engineer like him, it was a loose thread, and he just had to pull on it.
And here is the beautiful irony. Freund later said that the attackers' own incredible caution, all those layers of complexity and misdirection they built to hide their tracks, that was the very thing that created the half-second delay. Their own paranoia is what gave them away.
So once Friend raised the alarm, the internet's immune system kicked in. The backdoor was neutralized, and the immediate crisis was over. But the biggest questions? They were just beginning to surface. This wasn't just a technical failure. It was a deeply human one.
So, yeah, the big one. Who was this master manipulator? Who on earth has the resources and the sheer patience to pull off a multi-year operation targeting the very heart of the internet? The general consensus is that Jiatan wasn't one person, but a well-funded, state-sponsored group. The evidence is all over the place. Sometimes stamps point to China, others to Russia, but it was all done so carefully it could easily be intentional misdirection. The truth is, we will probably never know for sure. But, maybe the more important question isn't who did it, but what this whole mess reveals about the foundation of our digital world. The system took a volunteer's gift, exploited his burnout, and then basically blamed him. It just highlights this completely unfair and unsustainable burden we've created.
And that leaves us with a pretty chilling thought. We dodged a bullet this time, all thanks to one curious developer and a half-second delay. But the vulnerability, that's still there. The internet is still a tower built on the thankless, unpaid work of people like Lasse Collin. So the question we really have to ask ourselves is, how many other critical pieces of our world are being maintained by someone who's just one bad week away from giving the keys to the wrong person?